Ethan woke up to a strange humming sound. His head felt heavy, and his body ached as if he had been thrown around like a rag doll. He opened his eyes slowly, squinting against the bright light above him. The sky was unlike anything he had ever seen, purple with streaks of orange clouds that seemed to glow faintly. He sat up, looking around in confusion. Where was he? This wasn't Earth. The ground beneath him was soft, almost spongy, and the air smelled sweet, like flowers mixed with something metallic. In the distance, towering structures rose into the sky, their shapes twisting and curving in ways that made them look alive. Strange creatures moved about, some walking on two legs, others floating or crawling. Some had scales, fur, or even shimmering wings. Ethan's heart raced. Was this real? Or had he hit his head and was dreaming? Before he could think too much, a voice startled him. "You're not supposed to be here." Ethan turned quickly, nearly losing his balance. Standing a few feet away was a tall figure with smooth blue skin that sparkled faintly in the light. Her large, glowing eyes studied him curiously. She didn't look human, but her voice was calm and kind. I don't know where I am," Ethan stammered, taking a step back. "One moment I was at home, and now—" He gestured helplessly at the alien landscape. The creature tilted her head slightly, as if trying to understand him better. "My name is Lyra," she said after a pause. "You're at the Intergalactic Academy." "The what?" Ethan blinked, feeling more confused than ever. "It's a school," Lyra explained patiently, "for beings from across the galaxy. But you're human. Humans haven't been seen in centuries." Ethan frowned. "What do you mean?" "Humans are everywhere on Earth." Lyra's expression shifted, her glowing eyes widening slightly. "Earth? You're from Earth?" She sounded both surprised and excited. "Come with me. You can't stay out here. It's dangerous." Dangerous? Ethan wanted to argue, but he didn't have much choice. His mind was spinning, and Lyra already seemed to know more about this place than he did. Reluctantly, he followed her toward the strange buildings. As they walked, Ethan couldn't stop staring at everything around him. Creatures of all kinds bustled past, speaking in languages he didn't understand. Some glanced at him curiously, while others ignored him completely. One small furry creature with 6 legs scampered up to him, sniffed his shoe, and then darted away. Ethan stumbled backward, startled. "Don't worry," Lyra said with a small smile. "Most of them are harmless. Just different." Different didn't begin to cover it. Ethan felt completely out of place. Everything here was so bizarre, so far beyond anything he'd ever imagined. Yet despite his fear, there was a tiny spark of excitement deep inside him. This was like nothing he'd ever experienced before, a whole new world, full of mysteries waiting to be uncovered. When they reached one of the larger buildings, Lyra led him through a set of massive doors. Inside, the ceiling stretched high above them, filled with floating orbs of light. Students of all shapes and sizes hurried along wide hallways, carrying books or objects that looked like books, and chatting animatedly. The noise was overwhelming, a mix of clicks, chirps, and hums that Ethan couldn't make sense of. "This is where you'll stay for now," Lyra told him, stopping near a doorway. "I'll explain more later, but first, try to relax. You're safe here." Safe? Ethan wasn't sure he believed that yet, but as he looked at Lyra's reassuring face, he decided to trust her, for now. Whatever this place was, it was clear his life had changed forever. And maybe, just maybe, this strange new world would teach him things he never dreamed possible. Ethan's first day at the Intergalactic Academy was overwhelming. Lyra stayed by his side, guiding him through the crowded hallways and introducing him to some of the other students. Most of them stared at him with wide eyes, whispering among themselves in languages he couldn't understand. Some seemed curious, leaning closer to get a better look at him. Others kept their distance, casting wary glances his way. "This is Kel," Lyra said, stopping near a tall reptilian creature with green scales and sharp teeth. Cal crossed his arms and narrowed his yellow eyes at Ethan. A human. Cal's voice was deep and gruff, filled with suspicion. What's a human doing here? They're supposed to be extinct. I'm not extinct, Ethan replied, trying to sound confident even though his hands were trembling. I'm very much alive. Cal let out a low growl, but didn't say anything else. Instead, he turned and walked away, leaving Ethan feeling small and out of place. Next, Lyra introduced him to Nita, a bird-like creature with feathers that shimmered like rainbows. Her large, round eyes blinked slowly as she studied him. You're different, she said softly, her voice melodic. But I think you'll fit in. Eventually. Ethan managed a weak smile, though he wasn't sure he believed her. Everyone here seemed so advanced, so capable. He felt like a child trying to keep up with adults. Classes started soon after, and that's when things got even harder. In one room, students were learning how to manipulate energy fields, shaping glowing orbs of light into intricate patterns. The teacher, a floating jellyfish-like creature with long tentacles, demonstrated the technique effortlessly. When it was Ethan's turn, he tried to copy what he'd seen, but instead of forming a ball of light, he accidentally sent a burst of energy flying across the room, knocking over a stack of books. The class erupted into laughter. Ethan's face burned with embarrassment as he muttered an apology. Even Lyra looked a little amused, though she quickly covered her mouth to hide her smile. Later, during a lesson on telepathy, Ethan struggled again. The teacher instructed everyone to focus on sending thoughts to the person next to them. Ethan closed his eyes and concentrated as hard as he could, but all he heard in his mind was silence. When he opened his eyes, the student beside him, a tiny, slug-like creature, was shaking its head in frustration. He's hopeless, the slug muttered loudly enough for Ethan to hear. By the end of the day, Ethan was exhausted. He slumped onto a bench outside the main building, staring at the strange purple sky. I don't belong here, he mumbled to himself. I can't do any of this stuff. Maybe I should just leave. Lyra appeared beside him, sitting down without saying a word. For a moment, they both sat in silence, watching the glowing orbs of light drift lazily through the air. You know, Lyra finally said, breaking the quiet, everyone starts somewhere. Cal used to trip over his own tail during combat training, and Nia once set an entire classroom on fire because she sneezed while practicing flame manipulation. Ethan glanced at her, surprised. Really? Lyra nodded. Of course. No one is perfect right away. You're human. You're new to all of this. But that doesn't mean you can't learn. Just give yourself time. Her words made sense, but Ethan still felt unsure. What if I never catch up? What if I'm always the worst at everything? Then you'll still be here, Lyra said firmly, because giving up isn't an option. Not at this academy. We don't turn our backs on people who need help. Her confidence gave Ethan a small flicker of hope. Maybe he wouldn't master everything overnight, but perhaps he could improve. Slowly, step by step. As the sun, or whatever passed for a sun on this planet, began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Ethan stood up. Okay, he said, taking a deep breath. I'll try again tomorrow. Lyra smiled, her glowing eyes lighting up. That's all anyone can ask for. And with that, Ethan took his first real step toward finding his place in this strange, alien world. As the days turned into weeks, Ethan began to notice something strange. While most of his classmates struggled with certain tasks, he seemed to have a natural talent for them. At first, he thought it was just luck or coincidence, but the more time passed, the harder it became to ignore. It started in telepathy class. The teacher asked everyone to try sending simple thoughts to each other again. This time, when Ethan focused, he felt a faint buzzing in his mind. Suddenly, an image of a flower appeared in his head, bright and vivid, like someone had planted it there. He looked around, confused, until he noticed Nia staring at him with wide eyes. "Did you do that?" she chirped, pointing at her own head. "Do what?" Ethan asked, still puzzled. "You sent me this." She gestured toward the flower floating in her mind. Her feathers shimmered excitedly. "That's amazing. You didn't even look like you were trying." Ethan blinked, unsure how to respond. He hadn't meant to do anything special. It had just happened. Later that week, during energy manipulation practice, the same thing occurred. The students were tasked with creating small orbs of light and keeping them steady in the air. Most of them wobbled uncontrollably, their lights flickering. When it was Ethan's turn, he hesitated, remembering his earlier disaster. But as soon as he reached out with his hands, a perfect sphere of glowing light formed without any effort. Not only did it stay stable, but it also grew brighter and larger than anyone else's. The classroom fell silent. Even the teacher, a tall insectoid creature with glittering wings, paused mid-sentence, watching in awe. "Incredible," the teacher murmured. "Such control and power." Cale scowled from across the room, muttering under his breath about beginners getting lucky. But Ethan could tell the others were impressed, even if they didn't say it out loud. Word of Ethan's abilities spread quickly through the academy. Soon, he caught the attention of Professor Vren, one of the senior instructors. Vren was intimidating. A towering figure with 6 spindly legs and a body covered in iridescent plates. His voice echoed like thunder whenever he spoke. "I've been observing you, human," Vren said one afternoon, approaching Ethan after class. "Your skills are unusual, untrained, yet potent. I'd like to mentor you privately." Ethan froze, unsure what to say. Mentorship sounded important, but it also felt like a lot of pressure. "Why me?" he asked finally. Vren tilted his head, his large compound eyes glinting. "Because you're different. There's something unique about humans, an untapped potential we haven't seen in millennia. If guided properly, you could achieve great things." Though Ethan tried to stay humble, he couldn't deny feeling a spark of pride. For the first time since arriving at the academy, he felt like he might actually belong here. Maybe he wasn't just some clumsy outsider who didn't fit in. Under Vren's guidance, Ethan's training intensified. The professor pushed him hard, teaching him techniques far beyond what the other students were learning. Sometimes, Ethan grew frustrated, especially when progress felt slow. But every breakthrough filled him with confidence. He discovered he could sense emotions in others, read intentions, and even shield his mind from unwanted intrusions. Despite his growing success, not everyone was happy about it. Cale grew increasingly jealous, glaring at Ethan whenever their paths crossed. During group exercises, Cale often made snide comments, questioning whether Ethan truly deserved his achievements. "He's probably cheating somehow," Cale grumbled one day while they worked on a team project. "Humans always take shortcuts." Ethan clenched his fists but chose not to argue. Instead, he focused on proving himself through action rather than words. Slowly, some of the other students began to admire him, seeking his advice during difficult assignments. Even so, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was going on. Why was he so good at these alien skills? And why did everyone seem to think humans were special? As much as he enjoyed his newfound abilities, he knew there were still secrets waiting to be uncovered, secrets that might change everything he thought he knew about himself and his place in the galaxy. Late one night, when the academy was quiet and most students had gone to their quarters, Ethan found himself unable to sleep. His mind kept racing with questions about his abilities and the strange things Professor Vren had hinted at. Deciding he needed some fresh air, he slipped out of his room and wandered through the dimly lit hallways. The academy looked different at night. The glowing orbs that usually lit the corridors were dimmed, casting long shadows across the walls. As Ethan walked, he noticed a door slightly ajar, a door he had never seen open before. Curiosity got the better of him, and he pushed it gently, peeking inside. The room was filled with ancient artifacts, dusty books, and holographic displays flickering faintly in the dark. It was the Academy's restricted archives, a place Lyra had once mentioned was off-limits to students. Ethan hesitated for a moment, but stepped inside anyway. Something about this room called to him, as if it held answers to the questions swirling in his mind. He wandered among the shelves, running his fingers over the spines of old books written in languages he didn't recognize. Then something caught his eye, a hologram displaying images of Earth. Confused, Ethan activated the projection. The image shifted, showing humans living alongside aliens thousands of years ago. They built cities together, shared knowledge, and explored the stars side by side. Ethan's heart raced. How could this be? Humans weren't supposed to have been part of the galaxy's history, not according to what he'd always learned back on Earth. But here was proof, clear as day. The hologram continued, revealing that humans had mysteriously vanished from the galactic stage millions of years ago. No one knew why, but many believed they possessed incredible powers. Powers so great they might have altered the balance of the universe. Before Ethan could process what he was seeing, another voice startled him. "What are you doing here?" He spun around to find Lyra standing in the doorway, her glowing eyes wide with concern. She hurried over, glancing nervously at the hologram. "You're not supposed to be in here," she whispered urgently. "I had to know," Ethan said, his voice trembling. "Why does everyone act like humans are special? Why do I feel like I'm different?" Lyra sighed, looking conflicted. "Because it's true," she admitted softly. "My people, the Zenari, we've studied your kind for generations. Long ago, humans were known as the Starborn. Legends say you carried latent abilities capable of shaping reality itself. But something happened. Your species retreated to Earth, cutting yourselves off from the rest of the galaxy. Over time, you forgot who you really were." Ethan stared at her, his mind reeling. "So, I'm not just here by accident." Lyra shook her head. "I don't think so. There's a reason you arrived now, at this moment. Maybe the galaxy needs you again." The weight of her words hit Ethan like a tidal wave. He thought about all the strange abilities he'd developed, the way others looked at him with awe or suspicion. Could it be true? Was he somehow connected to these ancient legends? As they left the archive together, Lyra warned him to keep what he'd seen a secret. "Not everyone will react well to this knowledge," she said gravely. "Some might see you as a threat." Ethan nodded, though his mind was still spinning. He returned to his room feeling both excited and terrified. If Lyra was right, then his arrival at the Academy wasn't random. It was destiny. But what did that mean for his future? And more importantly, what would happen if others found out the truth? For the first time since coming to this alien world, Ethan felt like he was part of something much bigger than himself. Yet he couldn't shake the fear that the answers he sought might come with dangers he wasn't ready to face. The annual trials at the Intergalactic Academy were a big deal. Every student participated, working in teams to complete challenges that tested their skills and teamwork. For Ethan, this was his chance to prove himself, not just to others, but to himself. He had spent weeks training under Professor Vren, honing his abilities and building confidence. Still, he couldn't shake the nerves as the day of the trials arrived. Ethan's team consisted of Lyra, Kale, and Naya. They were assigned to retrieve a rare crystal from a dangerous biome known as the Shimmering Expanse. The area was infamous for its unpredictable weather, shifting terrain, and aggressive wildlife. It wasn't the kind of place anyone wanted to visit, let alone race through on a mission. As they prepared, Kale muttered under his breath about having to work with a human. "If you mess this up," he growled, glaring at Ethan, "I'll make sure everyone knows it's your fault." Ethan ignored him, focusing instead on the task ahead. Lyra gave him an encouraging smile, while Maya fluttered nervously beside them. "We can do this," she chirped softly. "Just stick together." The challenge began with a sprint across jagged rocks glowing faintly in the dim light. The ground shifted beneath their feet, forcing them to move quickly or risk falling into deep crevices. Ethan used his telepathy to sense weak spots in the path, guiding the group safely forward. Cale grudgingly admitted it was helpful, though he didn't say it out loud. Soon, they reached a dense forest where the trees seemed alive, their branches reaching out like grasping hands. Strange creatures lurked in the shadows, watching them with glowing eyes. One lunged suddenly, a sleek, feline-like beast with razor-sharp claws. Before anyone could react, Ethan raised his hand instinctively, creating a barrier of energy that stopped the creature in its tracks. "Nice one," Lyra said, impressed. Even Cale looked momentarily stunned. But the real trouble came when they finally found the crystal. It rested atop a pedestal in the center of a clearing, surrounded by swirling winds and crackling lightning. As they approached, the ground began to tremble. A massive worm-like creature erupted from below, its body covered in shimmering scales that reflected the storm around them. Panic set in as the team scattered. Nea took to the air, trying to distract the beast, while Lyra fired bursts of energy at its eyes. Cale slashed at it with his claws, but the creature barely flinched. Ethan stood frozen for a moment, unsure what to do. Then he remembered what Professor Vren had taught him. Focus not on fear, but on purpose. Closing his eyes, Ethan reached deep within himself, channeling all his strength. When he opened them again, his hands glowed brighter than ever before. He unleashed a wave of energy that struck the creature squarely, sending it retreating back underground. The storm subsided, leaving the clearing eerily calm. Breathing heavily, Ethan picked up the crystal and handed it to Lyra. "Let's get out of here," he said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. On the way back, Cale walked beside Ethan for the first time. "Not bad for a human," he muttered, though there was no malice in his tone. When they returned to the academy, the other students cheered, impressed by their success. Ethan felt a sense of pride he hadn't known before. He had faced danger, worked as part of a team, and proven he belonged. But more importantly, he realized something crucial. His powers weren't just tools, they were a responsibility. Whatever secrets lay ahead, he knew he had to be ready to face them head-on. Just as Ethan was starting to feel like he belonged at the academy, everything changed again. One evening, as students gathered in the main hall for dinner, alarms blared throughout the building. Red lights flashed, and a loud voice echoed over the speakers. "Intruder alert. All students report to safe zones immediately." Ethan looked around in confusion. Everyone else seemed to know what to do. Lyra grabbed his arm and pulled him toward a door marked with a glowing symbol. "We need to get to the shelters," she said urgently. Now. Before they could reach safety, the ground shook violently. A section of the wall exploded inward, sending debris flying everywhere. Through the smoke and dust, shadowy figures emerged, rogue aliens clad in dark armor, their weapons aimed at the students. At their center stood a tall, menacing figure with glowing red eyes. "You!" The leader snarled, pointing directly at Ethan. "Come with us, human. You have something we need." Ethan froze, his heart pounding. What did they want from him? Before he could react, Cale stepped forward, his claws extended. "Leave him alone," Cale growled, standing protectively in front of Ethan. The intruders laughed, raising their weapons. Chaos erupted as professors and older students rushed to defend the academy. Energy blasts lit up the room, and the air filled with shouts and cries. Ethan tried to stay close to Lyra and Nea, but the crowd pushed them apart. "Ethan, run," Lyra shouted, her voice barely audible over the noise. "Find Professor Vren." Ethan didn't want to leave his friends behind, but he knew he had no choice. Dodging the chaos, he sprinted down the hallway, searching for Vren. Along the way, he realized the attackers weren't just after him. They were targeting the Academy's archives, specifically the restricted section where he'd learned about humanity's ancient powers. When Ethan finally found Professor Vren, the insectoid teacher was already battling one of the intruders. "They seek knowledge," Vren explained quickly, his voice echoing with urgency, "and they believe you hold the key to unlocking it." Ethan's mind raced. He thought about the holograms he'd seen, the legends of humans shaping reality itself. Was that why these invaders had come? Did they think he could help them control such power? "We can't let them win," Ethan said firmly. For the first time, he felt a surge of determination stronger than his fear. Together, Ethan and Vren devised a plan. Using his abilities, Ethan created barriers to block the attacker's path, while Vren worked to seal off the archive doors. But the enemy kept coming, relentless and fierce. When the leader broke through, Ethan faced him head-on. "You don't understand what you're doing," the leader hissed, raising his weapon. "Your kind abandoned this power once. Do you think you can handle it now?" Ethan didn't answer. Instead, he focused all his energy into one final effort. Closing his eyes, he imagined a shield, not just to protect himself, but to push back against the invaders. When he opened his eyes, a brilliant wave of light surged outward, knocking the attackers off their feet and scattering their weapons. The room fell silent. The leader stared at Ethan, stunned, before retreating with his group. As the dust settled, Ethan collapsed to his knees, exhausted but alive. When the others arrived, they found him leaning against a wall, breathing heavily. Lyra hugged him tightly, her glowing eyes filled with relief. Even Kale gave him a rare nod of respect. Though the attack was over, Ethan knew this wasn't the end. The invaders had confirmed what he feared. His arrival at the academy wasn't random. His powers, and humanity's forgotten legacy, were part of something much bigger, something dangerous. And whatever came next, he would have to face it head-on. In the days following the attack, Ethan became a hero. The students and teachers of the academy spoke about his bravery during the invasion, how he had used his powers to protect everyone. Even Kale stopped making snide remarks, though he still gave Ethan sideways glances now and then. Nia couldn't stop talking about how amazing it was, her rainbow feathers shimmering with excitement whenever she saw him. Lyra, as always, stayed by his side, offering quiet support and guidance. But Ethan didn't feel like a hero. He felt uneasy. The invaders' words lingered in his mind. Asterisk, your kind abandoned this power once. Do you think you can handle it now? Asterisk, what did that mean? Was humanity truly meant to wield such abilities, or would they only bring trouble? He knew one thing for sure. His life would never be the same. Professor Vren called Ethan to his office one evening. The tall insectoid teacher stood by a glowing orb, its light casting strange patterns on the walls. "Ethan," Vren began, his deep voice calm but serious, "you've shown great courage and strength. But the truth is, your journey has only just begun." "What do you mean?" Ethan asked, his stomach tightening. "The rogues who attacked us, they won't give up easily," Vren explained. "They believe humans hold the key to ancient powers, powers that could change the balance of the galaxy. Whether they're right or wrong, you are now at the center of their plans." Ethan sighed, rubbing his temples. "I don't even know what these powers are. How am I supposed to figure this out?" "You already have a gift," Vren said firmly. "You've proven that. With time and training, you'll learn more. And you won't be alone. You have friends here. Lyra, Kale, Nita. All of us will help you." For the first time in weeks, Ethan felt a flicker of hope. Maybe he didn't need to face everything by himself. Maybe being part of something bigger wasn't so scary after all. As the academy began to rebuild from the attack, Ethan made a decision. He would stay, at least for now. There was still so much to learn, not just about his powers but about the galaxy itself. Every day brought new challenges, new discoveries. He practiced harder than ever, determined to master his abilities. Slowly, he earned the respect of his classmates, even Kale, who started treating him less like an outsider and more like a teammate. One evening, As Ethan sat outside the academy watching the alien stars, Lyra joined him. "What happens next?" she asked softly, her glowing eyes reflecting the sky. "I'm not sure," Ethan admitted, "but I think I'm ready to find out." Lyra smiled. "Wherever you go, whatever you do, remember, you're not just human anymore. You're part of something much bigger." Ethan nodded, feeling a sense of peace settle over him. For the first time since arriving at the academy, he didn't feel lost. He didn't know exactly where his journey would take him, but he was excited to see where it led. Somewhere among these strange worlds and incredible beings, he had found a place where he belonged. The galaxy stretched endlessly before him, full of mysteries waiting to be uncovered. And for the first time, Ethan felt ready to step into the unknown, not as an outsider, but as someone who could make a difference. Whatever came next, he knew he wouldn't face it alone.